and people want to be like, we got you. The game can come to PC now, and you don't need an SSD. Hey, come over here. Shh. Stop talking. Stop it. You don't know what you're talking about. Shh. Shut up.
All right, zip it.
You can't even
zip it. Zip.
So you're saying Sony lied basically about the SSD or the
Today, Junior?
Yeah, the SSD, because apparently Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, if you play it on the... Well, here's a couple things.
Oh, no. Not again.
Oh boy, the amount of salt that's piling in at the moment is actually difficult to control. The amount of things going on in the gaming industry at the moment, especially between Microsoft and Sony, the PlayStation fanboys can't catch a break at the moment. Now all of a sudden, the PC specs have come out for Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Would you look at that? An SSD is only recommended. Now it does only show this on the lower spec part. It will be interesting to see how an HDD will cope with the higher settings, and it will be interesting to see if it'll run okay. I don't think it'll run amazingly with the higher settings enabled on a HDD. Then it'll debunk everything that Insomniac said that the SSD was absolutely required to play Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and that the Sony PlayStation 5 was the only place that you can play it. Let's see what kind of job Nixie's has done. Hopefully they've done a really good job of this. I'll probably play it in the future on a discount. I'm not in a massive rush to go ahead and play it. I mean, the Ratchet games are cool, but they're not my biggest priority when it comes to my own time. So what do you think happened on Twitter and on YouTube, actually? We have Reforged Gaming and we have MBG, the one we can't get away from. But first, let's go and look at what was said on Twitter.
Minimum requires no SSD, but if minimum has potatoed assets, they'll take very little RAM and load faster. And let's remember, Ratchet and Clank was in development prior to knowing the PS5 specs, so they feature locked to a lower safe spec. Still amazing job, as always, by Nixis.
Like I said, we'll probably have to wait and see how it runs on the higher specs. But we have no idea until the game actually comes out and, you know, Digital Foundry does their thing. But you see how the goalposts have been shifted. Now apparently Insomniac had no idea what the PS5 specs are going to be before it came out. I'm sure those plans must have been in place well before this game was in development. It's not like the PS5 just goes poof.
Poof.
And just fucking burst into existence. And it looks like Wooly Gamer here didn't want any negative comments in the replies, so only the people he follows could actually reply in this comment, which makes it even funnier. He knows he was going to get blasted on this one.
Ah, oh, that's hot. That's hot.
It likely could have run on a PS4 and looked just fine. Yet Sony told me I needed a PS5 with a super fast SSD because it was needed for the fast rip transitions that couldn't be done on anything else.
You set me up.
No, I didn't set you up.
You lied to me.
No, I'm trying to help. Let me help you.
I really would like to see what low settings look like.
Oh, what do you want, Nefarious? Yes!
Now I think you know how the rest of Twitter went. Everyone believing all the bullshit marketing that Sony put in front of them. They'll just gobble it all up and believe everything that Sony says, because it makes them feel better about the $500 they spent on that plastic box. One more thing from Twitter I found it interesting was on Wario64's comment thread. This guy is saying, I'm so glad I bought my NVMe storage for my PC. I'm going to pirate this game even though I already have it on PS5. Now, I find this quite interesting because I think if you already own the game on PS5 and you think, I want to buy it on PC and try all the nice new ray tracing features, so on and so forth, max it out if you've got the system to do it, I think Sony should go out there and either heavily discount this game or just flat out give it to you, because you've already bought the game. You shouldn't really have to buy it, especially for full price again. Now let's move on to our two main PlayStation fanboys. This one's going to take me a bit of time, but I'm sure it'll be quite fun.
No direct storage on consoles? Yeah, if direct storage is not available on consoles, okay, if it's not available on consoles, then everything they said about Ratchet and Clank, it all makes perfectly good sense.
Okay, looks like we're going to have to let our man cook a little bit here.
Alexander Battaglia says they added ray tracing AO to Ratchet and Clank and ray tracing shadows from sun or moon. That on top of the first direct storage support with GPU decompression under DX12 on PC. I just love Nixus. Bring it on. All that hate people were going to try to bring to Ratchet and Clank coming to PC, you're all going to look real stupid. You're all going to look real stupid when Digital Foundry breaks down how it was achieved. You're going to look real dumb.
And should we really care how it was achieved? We should just be glad that the fact that Nixies can port it to PC hopefully do a good job. That's all we should really care about.
Don't you mean direct storage on PC? No, if direct storage was not available on consoles, it's not available right now, okay? It wasn't available when Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart was in development. Therefore, the developers speaking about the SSD and the PS5 making Ratchet and Clank possible, they were telling the truth. All these dolts on Twitter that are like, oh, it's coming to PC and you don't need an SSD? I guess they lied. No, you don't understand technology. Like, you don't understand what happened.
Well, Reforge, if those people don't understand technology, why don't you just go ahead and give us a really good example? Because in all honesty, I'm good at tech, but I don't know how the hell they do it, and I'll openly admit it. Or you need to give us a very good explanation on how this all works. Because again, I haven't got a fucking clue. Please enlighten us.
You're trying to create something out of nothing. We already have Alex Battaglia from Digital Foundry. He's already talking about how they're leveraging the power on PCs.
Then show me, Reforge, because I honestly can't find anything about this. Here's Digital Foundry's Twitter, and I can't find anything. Let's go over to their YouTube, their last videos, or some bullshit Last of Us ripoff on Switch, something about Unreal Engine 5, and the weekly Microsoft Direct thing. I don't really know I don't think there's anything about it in here. That was 3 days ago, so that was before the specs were out. So no, you're talking shit, Reforge. Or unless someone can point me, which he should have done in his live stream, point me towards where the facts are.
At the time Ratchet and Clank released, there was no direct storage on consoles or on PC, says Corey. Also, the SSDs at the time weren't as fast as the PS5. The SSD didn't catch up and pass the PS5 until later. Right, but people want to pull chronological stupidity. Like, this is why you...
Say fuck for me. Just once. Come on, we'll do it together. It's no big deal. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Fuck. Wow. Enjoy hell, swamp mouth.
Oh, he almost upset members of the church then. He almost said the F word. He was so close. Well, that comment got him a bit fired up because it's quite true. The PS5, at the time it came out, had the fastest SSD. Then the PC caught up and actually overtook it, and it made sense. But it will be interesting to see what speed SSD is required for this game. Will it work on an older 2.5-inch SSD, or will it require the higher speed NVMe, or will it run on the lower speed NVMEs? This will be interesting.
To get on that soapbox, you have to stop listening to liars. Like, stop it. Stop listening to people that aren't honest. Stop it. They don't care about games. They don't care about accuracy, integrity. They don't care about that. They'll just drive some bogus narrative to win points, and you'll cheer it on, and you'll parrot it, and you just end up looking stupid.
That's rich coming from a guy that's been made to look stupid by Fratanga a lot of times. I have to give credit to Fratanga. I don't think I could be able to debunk this guy as much as he could. But fuck, he has made him look silly on multiple occasions. And Alex made him look very silly too.
What they did with Ratchet and Clank, it was only possible because of the SSD.
I'm sure someone proved that this was possible on HDD when the game came out. I'm not sure where the video is or who had the video link before. If someone could point me in the direction of that one, that'd be quite interesting to see. I'm sure someone said something along the lines, correct me if I'm wrong, that it would have been even possible, or there was a game similar on the PS3 where the game loads the assets into the RAM and the game pulls it out as and when needed, therefore the game didn't need any loading screens. I might be completely talking out my ass there, but I do remember and recall something along them lines.
The issue is the developers said that Ratchet and Clank, according to AOZ here, AOZ knows what he's talking about, by the way, leverage the IO subsystem in the PS5, which is similar to direct storage. That doesn't make for as easy a marketing point, but that is true. A lot.
And there we go. It doesn't make as easy of a marketing point. So what do they do in the marketing? Just feed you what you want to hear. Feed you little lies with touches of truth in them. If you put all that technology jargon into marketing, people will just fucking get scared and think, what the fuck is all this? But instead they just go, only available on the PS5 because of the SSD power. Then it's easier for simple-minded people to just gobble it all up. And they'll go out there and purchase it thinking they've got the latest and greatest thing in technology.
A lot of people forget that the real trick with Ratchet and Clank is the I/O and the data controller. It's not just the SSD. The Kraken decompression algorithm and the decompression blocks on the AMD chip are the secret sauce. Right, it's easier to just say instantaneous loading on the SSD enabled us to do a bunch of cool stuff. That's easier to say to the public. You can't say what AOZ just put in chat. It has 2 I/O co-processors with 12 channels and hardware decompression. People be like, what? Can you speak in English, Mr. Spock? Like, what? Nobody would understand that.
And this is where I can agree with him. It's true, nobody would understand that. All people want to hear is the simple terms that sell the product. And that's exactly what they did. They sold the product by just saying a few simple words. And that kind of marketing is very effective.
It's marketing. It's the easiest way to sell it. Right, you're just saying, listen, the SSD's fast. We can do instantaneous loading. And look at what we were able to do in Ratchet and Clank, jumping from rift to rift to rift. And people want to be like, we got you. The game can come to PC now, and you don't need an SSD. Hey, come over here. Shh. Stop talking. Stop it. You don't know what you're talking about. Shh. Shut up.
Well, only time will tell, Reforge. Because if that thing runs perfectly fine on a HDD on max settings, you're going to look a bit stupid there. I find it really hard to tell whether this bothers him or not. Apparently this guy's got 4 PCs and he chooses to play on a PlayStation. For the love of God, I have no idea why, but with the game coming to PC now, we'll see how events unfold in the future. The Reforge didn't seem that salty, but let's go and check out MBG and see what he has to say. And I might have to speed this fucker up because he's so slow at talking.
Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. So you're saying Sony lied basically about the SSD, the SSD, because apparently Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, if you play it on the, well, here's a couple things.
And this is why I have to speed him up, because he jumps through hoops to get to a conclusion.
So, number one, I have acknowledged this in the past, and I think it's important to acknowledge. I think that Sony went in a little too aggressively with the marketing of the SSD. And I think that in turn, people like myself, fans, maybe latched onto it a little too much.
No shit.
However, I don't know. Let me see. I want to look this up before I say it, because I don't want to be incorrect.
Well, at least you did the bare minimum to do your research while you were talking to your chat. I'll give you credit for that one, MBG.
Okay, so I have an article here from PlayStationTrophies.org. It says this was published June 23rd, 2020. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart's dimensional rifts only possible with PlayStation 5's SSD. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart's gameplay reveal was stunning, wasn't it? Especially impressive seeing the dynamic duo jump between worlds on the fly in a matter of seconds. Insomniac's Marcus Smith, creative director on the game, explained how this new feature was only made possible with PlayStation 5's solid-state drive in a new video that dives further into the game reveal. Quote, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is a game that utilizes dimensions and dimensional rifts, and that would not have been possible without the solid-state drive of the PlayStation 5, end quote. This is what, again, Marcus Smith is saying. He continues by saying the SSD is screamingly fast. It allows us to build worlds and project players from one place to another at near instantaneous speeds. It's an unbelievable game changer. We can now do gameplay where you're in one world and the next moment you're in another, and we're loading up levels that happen so quickly and in the action that you don't even imagine that this is something we couldn't do before because it feels so natural. Long gone are the loading screens. Now it's all about bringing exciting new adventures. Smith also goes into detail about how the game uses DualSense and obviously other features of the PS5.
And that was all marketing for the news outlets, the IGNs and the Kotaku and all the rest of them, where it was news for them to gobble up and spread out and make the game look good at the same time. And the news outlets gobbled it up as much as the PlayStation Fanboys did, where the PlayStation Fanboys ran with the narrative that the SSD was the only thing that could run Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. There wasn't anything else to do with the console at all. It was just this magical SSD.
Okay, it is on record here. It is on record that Insomniac's creative director in 2020, Marcus Smith, he said, it's this specifically, he says, it's important to note, he doesn't say the entire game, because obviously we know it's not the entire game. I mean, we've seen previous Ratchet and Clank games running on previous hardware. He says, again, quote, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is a game that utilizes dimensions and dimensional rifts, and that would not have been possible without the solid-state drive of the PlayStation 5. I guess in a way, that could maybe be viewed as like the entire game, but
there have been games before this one I've had similar things to the dimensional rift, and we didn't have the current day technology to do it.
It says here the minimum spec requirements for an average oh my god. Well, geez, I didn't realize that. So to play the game at 720p 30 frames per second on PC, with the graphics settings very low, you need an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 960 or AMD Radeon RX 470, Intel Core i3 8100 or AMD Ryzen 3 3100, 8GB of RAM, Windows 10 64-bit, and then storage, 75GB HDD space. They say, you know what's interesting? They say here at the bottom, SSD recommended.
And you know the cool thing about that is, more people get to play the game, and very likely chance it's going to run well on a Steam Deck, which means even more people can play the game. Because some people chose the Steam Deck to get into PC gaming in the first place, and I think that's really cool. The wide range of GPUs and CPUs this game can run on, the more the better really, because there are people out there that aren't very fortunate and are still rocking really old GPUs and CPUs, are still going to be able to play this game, and I think that is perfectly fine. Okay, they're not going to get the best experience, as long as the game's playable, that's fine with me. I don't see that being a problem at all.
If you go for the recommended specifications, it says 75GB SSD. So that's interesting. So they're basically telling you, like, if you want to play this game, like, at the recommended way it's meant to be played, you should probably have an SSD. They're advising not to play it on the HDD.
Yes, that's recommended for probably the best experience. But like I said earlier, it's going to be really interesting seeing that thing run on the higher specs on a HDD. And I would like to see if we get a loading screen of some sort while those rifts happen.
So there's that. But here's the second important thing I want to mention here. We don't know what this game's going to look like. We don't know if this is actually going to work or not. I mean, I'm going to assume, and we'll have to wait to see how it plays out. I'm going to assume that if they're putting the HDD as the absolute minimum recommendation, that the game will run, right? Like, it will work. But I've seen people mentioning that, like, what if there's actually a loading screen? What if there's like a black screen for a couple seconds or something as they're loading in the dimensional shifts? That could be a possibility, but we won't actually know until somebody tests it.
Yeah, it might have a loading screen, but I don't really see it being a problem. As long as it doesn't wreck the core gameplay. A little loading screen between the rifts isn't going to be that bad. I mean, go back to the old Resident Evil 1 and 2 days where every single fucking door was a loading screen. And it took forever for that bitch to open. I mean, that didn't wreck the gameplay for me back in them days. I'm sure, as long as the core gameplay is fine, it's not going to be a problem now, is it?
But it is true. There's no denying that it is on record. Insomniac's creative director said that these dimensional shifts are only possible because of the SSD. And I will say this. If when Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart drops on PC, if somebody analyzes the minimum specification and it turns out that it kind of breaks the game, as in, like, there are, like, stutters or black screens or essentially loading of any kind in the dimensional shifts, then at that point, Insomniac pretty much technically didn't lie. You know what I mean? They technically didn't lie, but it is, I understand why it looks really bad, because that's what happens when you speak in hyperbole, you know? When you say it's not possible.
Well, no, if it's going to break the game, then Insomniac wouldn't release it. Nixie's has obviously found a workaround for this. I obviously don't see it as much of a problem that they just put recommended SSD on there. And they say recommended for the best experience possible. I have faith in Nixie's after the Spider-Man PC port. I mean, it was really good. That loaded really fast and everything, so yeah, I'd like to see what they do with this and disprove all these silly fanboys.
It's not possible. Like, are you sure about that, though? I mean, like, I guess there will have to be some nuance injected into this conversation once we actually get the analysis and we see how it runs. It might be a situation where it turns out that to play the game the way it was meant to be played, you need the SSD. If you want to play this game on HDD, it is possible, but it's going to be pretty bad. And it's not going to be the way Insomniac intended. I feel like that's likely where this conversation is.
Like I just said, it can't be bad. Otherwise, they wouldn't suggest that you can run it on a HDD. Get this through your thick skull, MPG. Fucking hell. If you market a game to be able to run on something, it should be able to run on something. But if Nixie's fucks it up, they shouldn't have marketed it to work on an HDD. That's on them then.
That's likely where this conversation is headed. So, but yeah, as I've said, and I will reiterate this once again, just to be clear, I do feel that Sony went in a little too hard with the PlayStation 5 SSD, and I think the fan base, myself included, I think I latched onto it a little bit too much. I bought into the hype, man, and I'm not saying the PS5 SSD wasn't or isn't impressive. It is, and obviously it is doing some great things, and it will continue to do great things, but I just don't know at this point. Here's the problem, in my opinion. The problem is that when we look at the beginning of the PlayStation 5 generation, Sony talked about the PS5, and specifically PS5 games from them, as if they're not going to PC.
Oh, and here we go. Just admitted he bought into the marketing of the PS5 SSD, and then he bought into the fact that at the start of the generation, well, this current generation anyway, that the PlayStation games weren't going to PC. And then Horizon Zero Dawn and Days Gone kickstarted it all. And it was glorious to watch.
Sony is not going multi-platform. I think we can all agree that when we were listening to the things that Sony was saying and their marketing surrounding the PS5 in 2020, nothing indicated that these games were going to go to PC. Nothing indicated that we were going to see anything other than we're making these games for PS5, they're going to live on PS5, and that's that. Because that's the thing. The only reason we're having this conversation is because at the time, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart was positioned as this is a PS5 exclusive. Now it's a PS5 exclusive that's also releasing on PC.
And here we go with the same old topic. Why is that such a big problem? Other people get to play your games. Fucking hell, I even sound like a fucking broken record at this point. Jesus Christ. I mean, Rift Apart's been out, what, 2 years now? And it sounds like he's having a bitch fit about it coming out on PC already. Why? All Sony are trying to do is grab a few extra dollars from the PC market. And hopefully they're successful. I mean, I hope Nixie's hard work doesn't get just chucked in the trash, because games coming to other platforms that were originally exclusive is a massive W for the consumer more than anyone. All it means is that the PC player that only plays on PC doesn't have to go out there and buy a PS5 if they really want to play that game. Why is that such a big problem?
So, you know, it is what it is, man. The only thing I wish Sony would do, and I know they're not going to do this, no company will do this, I'm basically asking them to not market their products. I just think, well, you know what? I'll speak from my end. I realize now that you have to be very careful about the marketing side of things, especially with a brand new product. I know that may be obvious to some people, but when you're like passionate about something, I'll admit, like when I'm passionate about something, I tend to like yeah, whatever you say, man, like it's everything and more that you're saying, because I'm excited. And when you're excited, you kind of hear what you want to hear. You know what I mean? But what I've learned is that following Sony and especially like under Jim Ryan, I've learned that they're willing to pivot and shift at any moment, and that I should be careful to completely believe and buy in.
This man's about the same age as me, and he hasn't realized that already. I realized that marketing was bullshit many years ago. When you buy a product and it's garbage, that's the time you say to yourself, right, don't listen to what the fucking marketing says. It's not hard. You should never believe marketing. You should always go and do further research, or wait until you see reviews on YouTube or through other media outlets. Never believe what the corporation tells you, because all they want is to empty your pockets of every single penny that's in there.
Shelley, you're saying no, Insomniac said those things in the context of the PS4. Well, I understand that, and that you're probably right, but when I'm looking at the minimum specifications, I'm looking at these minimum specifications. This game could run on the PS4.
And that's about the end of it. This took a lot of scrolling through and scrubbing through to get to this kind of conclusion. Going through an MBG stream, it's really hard not to sleep through it. Sometimes I put them on just to get me to go to bed. And yes, it probably would run on a PS4. That's the interesting part of it. With those lower specifications, I don't see why not, but never mind. Let me hear what you guys think in the comments. This is the longest video I've made in a while. I forget how exhausting it is to make these fucking things. What do you think about what Reforge was saying? I mean, go and check his stream out for yourself if you want nightmares for the rest of your day. I just chose out the conversation topic surrounding Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Are you guys going to buy it on PC? Have you already got it? Have you already played it? Is the game any good? Let me know in the comments. If you like the video, press like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. I need some headache tablets. My god, MBG's wrecked my head.